Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the show that digs into the sources to pull out the insights you can actually use. And today, we're starting a really personal journey, I think. It's all about self-understanding. What if you could get, many of the big benefits of therapy, but do it yourself, on your own terms? That's really the core idea we're diving into today.
Yeah, and our map for this journey comes from a fantastic book, The Art of Self-Therapy: How to Grow, Gain Self-Awareness, and Understand Your Emotions by Nick Trenton. And this isn't just vague advice. It's packed with solid, evidence-based techniques, the kinds professionals use, but adapted so you can use them.
Right. So our mission for this deep dive is to pull out the most useful, the most actionable bits from the book. Think of it as a shortcut, maybe, to finding more contentment, challenging those thoughts that hold you back, and just getting a clearer picture of your own life story. We'll look at understanding yourself better, exploring your past, changing your thinking patterns, and really importantly, taking action to build the life you actually want. Sound good?
Sounds like a worthwhile journey.
Definitely. Let's start right at the beginning then, with that huge question. Who are you? It sounds so simple, doesn't it? But how many of us are just sort of running on autopilot day to day, not really tuned in to our feelings or what we truly value, or even why we do the things we do?
And the book argues pretty strongly that self-awareness isn't just nice to have, it's step one. Absolutely essential. Without it, trying to grow or change is like, well, just going through the motions, as the book fits it. You need to know your starting point, right? Psychologist Ryan Howes describes self-exploration as really looking at your thoughts, feelings, actions, motivations, and asking why.
Becoming a sort of curious observer of yourself. I like that.
Exactly.
So how do we actually do that? The book gives us Dr. Tom Stevens a 6-step self-exploration process. Let's make it practical. Maybe use a simple example like just being in the shower.
Okay, yeah. Good everyday example.
So step 1 is switch on your inner noticer. It's about observing yourself without judgment, like a scientist. So you're in the shower and you notice maybe your jaw is clenched or you're replaying some argument in your head. You notice it. You don't get swept up in judging it. Just, that's happening.
Right, just pure observation first.
Then, skipping ahead a bit past identifying emotions and patterns, we get to step 5. What is the underlying core belief, value, or theme? This is where you connect the dots. That clenched jaw, that mental argument. So underneath. Maybe you realize, oh, this tension about work stuff. It feels just like when my dad used to criticize my school projects. You see that echo from the past.
Making that link from the surface symptom to the deeper root, that's powerful.
Yeah. And then step 6, use your insights to identify your boundaries, then take control, the action part, taking responsibility. So knowing where that tension comes from, you can consciously choose differently in that moment. Instead of letting the imaginary argument run wild, maybe you deliberately think, okay, wait, I'm capable. I'm doing my best. You actively intervene.
Taking the reins back from those old automatic responses. It's about conscious choice based on that new awareness. And, as you start noticing these things, you might uncover parts of yourself you're not so keen on. Which leads us nicely into Carl Jung's idea of shadow work.
The shadow. Sounds intriguing, maybe a bit dark.
It can feel that way sometimes. Jung basically called the shadow our psychological blind spot. It holds all the parts of ourselves we've pushed away or disowned. And that's not just the bad stuff, like anger or envy. Sometimes it's good stuff too, like maybe excitement or ambition if you were taught as a kid that those weren't okay.
So if you were punished for being loud or angry, that part of you might end up in the shadow.
Exactly. Pushed out of conscious awareness, but still there, influencing things.
Okay, so if it's hidden, how does it actually show up? How does it affect us?
Well, one really common way is through projection. That's when we take our own disowned feelings or traits and sort of stick them onto other people.
Like seeing something in someone else that really bugs you, but it's actually something you don't like about yourself.
Spot on. The book uses an example. Someone who secretly drinks too much but won't admit it might get really judgmental about a friend who smokes weed, calling them reckless. They're projecting their own disowned recklessness onto the friend, unconsciously diverting attention from their own issue.
Wow. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. So how do we engage with this shadow? It sounds important, but maybe tricky.
It does require patience, honesty, and a bit of bravery, and definitely a non-judgmental attitude towards yourself. A practical tip from the book is simply to pay attention to your emotional reactions. Anything that really pushes your buttons in someone else, like an unusually strong reaction, that could be a clue, a pointer towards something in your own shadow.
So those big reactions are like signposts.
Potentially, yes. Instead of just judging the other person, you ask yourself, why does this bother me so much? What part of me is getting activated here? It's about integrating those hidden parts, making you more whole.
Okay, so we're gaining self-awareness, maybe even looking into the shadow. And that often leads to thinking about the past, right? How we got to be this way.
It's a natural progression. And the key here isn't about getting stuck in the past or blaming anyone. It's about understanding its influence so we can maybe rewrite the parts that aren't helping us now.
And a huge piece of that puzzle, according to the book, is attachment theory, John Bowlby's work.
Absolutely fundamental. Bowlby suggested that our very first connections, usually with our parents or primary caregivers, create a kind of blueprint, an early template, he called it. And this template shapes how we approach all our future relationships. It literally affects our brain development, our capacity for intimacy. It's deep stuff.
So those first bonds are really foundational. The book talks about secure versus insecure attachment, right? Can you break that down a bit?
Sure. So if your caregivers were generally responsive, available, attuned to your needs, you likely developed a secure attachment. That tends to lead to more confidence, empathy, better boundaries later in life. You feel basically safe in relationships.
Okay, that's the ideal, sort of. What about insecure attachment?
Well, if that early care was inconsistent, or maybe rejecting or intrusive, then insecure styles can develop. The book focuses on two main ones. First, there's ambivalent, sometimes called anxious attachment. This often comes from inconsistent care. Sometimes needs were met, sometimes not. So as adults, these folks might feel needy, have lower self-esteem, constantly worry about abandonment. They crave closeness, but might also fear being smothered or left. Lots of anxiety in relationships.
That sounds really stressful, always waiting for the other shoe to drop, kind of.
Yeah, something like that. Lots of seeking reassurance, maybe getting panicked by distance. Then there's avoidant dismissive attachment. This often stems from experiences where the child felt rejected or their bids for connection were dismissed. So they learn to rely only on themselves, suppress their needs. As adults, they often value independence extremely highly, resist intimacy, can seem emotionally distant or cold. They might prefer superficial connections.
It's amazing how those early patterns can just play out again and again.
Yeah.
But the book doesn't leave us stuck there, does it? It suggests ways to work with these patterns.
Definitely not stuck. The core idea is about challenging those old patterns by gathering new evidence now. It involved actively challenging yourself. So, for instance, if you have trust issues stemming from an insecure attachment.
Which makes sense, right? If your early caregivers weren't reliable.
Exactly. So the challenge might be to consciously choose to trust someone in a small way, share something vulnerable, maybe ask for help with something minor, and then notice what actually happens. Does the feared catastrophe occur? Often it doesn't. You're essentially running little experiments to update those old predictions.
Showing your nervous system, hey, maybe things could be different now.
Precisely. Building new relational experiences. And this connects to another really powerful idea for healing past wounds. Reparenting your inner child. This also has roots in Jung's work.
Reparenting your inner child, it sounds comforting. Tell us more about that.
Well, the idea is that within each of us is still that younger, vulnerable self, the inner child, whose core beliefs and emotional world were shaped way back then. Reparenting means recognizing what that child part of you needed, but didn't get maybe safety, validation, encouragement, comfort, and consciously providing that for yourself now as an adult.
So you become the supportive parent you needed back then, but for yourself.
In essence, yes. It's about offering compassion and understanding to that younger part of you. It's acknowledging their feelings and needs.
How do you actually do that? How do you connect with this inner child?
The book suggests a technique called start a dialogue. You could visualize your younger self, maybe look at old photos to make it feel more real. Then you could try writing letters back and forth from your adult self to your child self and letting the child write back.
What kinds of things would you ask or say?
You might ask, what did you need back then that you didn't get? Or what were you afraid of? What did you need to hear? And crucially, listen to the answers that come up, focusing on the feelings involved, not just the historical facts. It's about emotional connection and repair.
That sounds incredibly powerful. A way to heal those old wounds from the inside out. Okay, so we've explored self-awareness, the past. Now let's shift focus to our thoughts. The book calls them the code that programs your life. Big statement.
It is, but when you dig into it, it makes sense. The book talks a lot about core beliefs. These are those really deep down assumptions we hold about ourselves, about other people, about the world. They often feel like facts, just the way things are.
But they're learned, right? not necessarily true.
Exactly, usually formed in childhood based on our experiences. And they operate often unconsciously, driving our negative self-talk, our self-sabotage, our emotional reactions. Like, if you have a core belief, I'm not good enough, losing a job isn't just a setback. It feels like proof of that belief. It confirms your deep-rooted fear about yourself.
Oof. Yeah, I can see how that would shape everything. So how do we change these core beliefs?
Well, cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, gives us a roadmap. First, you have to identify the belief. Then, ask yourself honestly, does this belief actually help me? Usually, the answer is no. So then you challenge it, question the evidence for it, maybe try to soften it, or even turn it on its head. And finally, crucially, you take action that contradicts the old belief and supports the new one.
And the book gives a specific technique for digging up those core beliefs, right? The downward arrow.
Yes, it's a great tool. It's like peeling an onion. You start with a surface thought or feeling. Let's use that public speaking example again. I feel awkward speaking up in meetings.
Okay.
You ask, okay, if that's true, what does that mean about me? Maybe the answer is, it means I'll say something stupid.
Right.
Then you ask again, and if you say something stupid, why would that be so bad? People might judge me, and if people judge you, then what? Maybe eventually you get down to something like, it means I'm fundamentally flawed, or I need everyone's approval to be okay.
Ah, so you follow the implications downwards until you hit that really fundamental underlying assumption.
Precisely. You uncover the code that's running the program.
But sometimes those thoughts, especially negative ones, just feel so overwhelming, like a tidal wave. Challenging them feels impossible.
Totally. And that's where another approach comes in, from acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT. It's called cognitive diffusion.
Diffusion, so not fighting the thought, but unhooking from it.
Exactly. It's not about changing the content of the thought, but changing your relationship to it. Think about the difference between being in a storm versus watching the storm from a safe window. Diffusion is like finding that window. So person A has the thought, I'm a failure, and they are that thought. It consumes them. Person B has the same thought, but they can notice, there's the I'm a failure thought again. See the difference?
Yeah, it's like creating space. You are not the thought. You're the one observing the thought.
That space is freedom. You realize thoughts are just words and images passing through your mind, not necessarily commands or absolute truth.
And the book is a lovely technique for practicing this, the leaves on a stream meditation.
Yes, it's very practical. You imagine sitting by a gently flowing stream. When a thought comes up, any thought, positive, negative, neutral, you just imagine placing it gently on a leaf.
And watching it float away down the stream.
Exactly. You don't push it away, you don't cling to it, you just let it drift by. Each thought gets its own leaf. It helps practice that skill of observing thoughts without getting tangled up in them.
Building that psychological distance. I like that. Okay,
Yeah.
This is all fantastic internal work, self-awareness, understanding the past, managing thoughts. But the book makes it clear that's only part of the picture, right? Action is key.
Absolutely crucial. The final section is all about how we translate internal shifts into external change, building the life you want, one action at a time. And a cornerstone concept here is behavioral activation. It's often used for depression, but the principle is broader. The core idea is simple but powerful. When we feel down or stuck, we tend to withdraw and do less. But that inactivity often makes us feel worse, creating a downward spiral.
So feeling bad leads to doing less, which leads to feeling worse.
Right. Behavioral activation flips that. It says, act first, even if you don't feel like it. Engage in activities that bring pleasure, a sense of accomplishment, or connection. The surprising thing is that motivation often follows action, not the other way around. You start doing things, and then you start to feel better, which makes you want to do more.
Breaking the cycle by starting with behavior. How do you figure out what actions to take?
A good starting point is the monitor your activity technique.
Okay, what's that involve?
For about a week, you literally just keep a log of what you do, hour by hour. And alongside that, you rate your mood, maybe on a simple 0-10 scale. It gives you a really clear visual picture of how different activities affect how you feel. You might see, wow, whenever I spend time outside, my mood goes up, or long stretches of scrolling social media really bring me down.
So you get your own personal data on what lifts you up and what drags you down.
Exactly. It moves it from guesswork to concrete observation.
And then, armed with that knowledge,
Then you connect it to your values. The book stresses the importance of knowing what truly matters to you, maybe connection, learning, creativity, health, whatever it is. And then you deliberately schedule activities that align with those values. This is activating value-driven activity.
So not just doing random things, but things that are meaningful to you.
Precisely. Start small with easy things that feel good and connect to your values. Build momentum. It's about consciously shaping your time around what gives your life meaning and satisfaction.
That makes so much sense. Okay, one last major tool the book offers, which sounds really interesting, behavioral experiments.
Yes, these are fantastic for tackling those persistent beliefs that hold us back, especially things like imposter syndrome or social anxiety.
How do they work? Are they like science experiments?
Kind of. They're about treating your beliefs not as facts, but as hypotheses to be tested in the real world. You're challenging those cognitive illusions by gathering actual evidence. The goal is to base your beliefs on reality, not just on fear or old assumptions. You become your own researcher.
Okay, intriguing. Can you walk us through the steps? How would someone actually do a behavioral experiment?
Sure. It's pretty straightforward. First, identify the belief you want to test. State it clearly, like, if I ask for help, people will think I'm incompetent.
Okay, got it.
Second, assess its strength. How much do you believe that right now, maybe 0 to 10 or 0 to 100%? Third, design the experiment. Be specific. What will you actually do to test the belief? In this case, it might be, I will ask my colleague Sarah for help with one specific part of the report tomorrow.
Okay, a clear, testable action.
Right. Fourth, do the experiment and record the results. Objectively note what actually happened. Did Sarah think you were incompetent? Did the world end? Or did she just help you? Then, based on that evidence, you consciously rewrite your initial belief. Maybe it becomes, asking for help on specific tasks is normal, and people are usually willing to assist.
So you're actively collecting data to disprove the unhelpful belief.
Exactly. And the really powerful question to keep asking yourself related to these experiments and just generally is, do I have solid evidence for this belief?
Mm-hmm.
And remember, the book emphasizes this: feelings are important, but they are not evidence. Just because you feel like people will laugh at you doesn't mean they actually will. Sometimes the most rational stance is simply to admit, I don't actually know for sure, rather than clinging to a negative assumption without proof.
Embracing uncertainty over unfounded negativity. That's a powerful shift. Wow, we've covered a lot of ground today. From really looking inward and asking, who am I, to understanding how our past shapes us through attachment.
And then digging into those core beliefs and thoughts, learning to diffuse from them.
Right. And finally, taking concrete, value-driven actions and even running experiments to build a life based on reality, not just fear. It really feels like a complete toolkit.
It really is. And the key takeaway, I think, is that this isn't about achieving some perfect endpoint. Self-therapy, self-understanding, it's an ongoing process. It's about cultivating awareness, practicing acceptance, and taking intentional action again and again. It's about empowering yourself to be the author of your own story.
Beautifully put. So as we wrap up this deep dive, here's something to maybe think about this week. What's just one small belief you hold maybe about yourself or about what might happen if you tried something new that might be worth testing with your own little behavioral experiment? What new truth might you uncover?